Got a bit of a back cramp. Still do. I'm gonna get out and walk, but I just opened the door. Slightly chilly. That's not what the video is about, though. Alright, so in the last few days, there's a lot of videos where I'm talking while I'm walking. And basically, I just got a shit ton of anxiety because of the situation and having Tom's stuff next to my car. But I really do want to push the fact that Tom wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't trying to be mean or hateful towards me. It's not some situation where Tom was trying to take advantage of me as a human being. He was trying to contact people and find a place safe for him to stay for the night. It just didn't happen. And she was driving him fucking nuts. Drives everybody nuts. But in a few of those, like, there's the one today where I was walking by him, and at the beginning of the video, I'm talking about how she said she was with the CIA and the FBI and thought she was related to the Queen. And then as I was walking, I ran into Tom, and he said the same thing. So, that's one video with that story, first of all, being reinforced by what he had to say about it. And yeah, I know, I'd heard it. So those of you who are not the cops, because the cops haven't watched the videos, but some of you actually have, you guys understand the situation a little bit better, and you know that neither me nor Tom are trying to do this lady wrong. This lady was driving him so nuts that he was gonna leave and pretend like he wasn't coming back in the hopes that she'd go back to Portland. With him staying next to my car, like literally all night long. He slept in a chair right next to the back end of my car, with a blanket all the way covering his entire body and the chair. You guys can see the videos with that where he's, or actually spin it around to show where he's at. I've got his phone number so I can contact him if need be, and he's been in contact with me through all this. He's been real nice. He's not trying to be mean to her or anything like that. And then earlier today, after he talked to her, he come over and talked to me, and he's like, yeah, she's going all sorts of crazy and accusing me of stuff that just you don't. And then I'm like, man, you know what? You try to help somebody out and they do you like that. Here's the thing, she's highly intelligent. As far as her being nuttier than Squirrel Turd, she absolutely is. Because here's the thing, when you do stuff like that to somebody, once in a while you can run into someone who's paranoid for a reason because they know what to expect. And that cop here tonight that I spoke with, I think I'd like for him to be the cop that I talk to every time. Now, when I told him that I know about the tweaker problem here, well, we've got, 3 or 4 people who verified that they're tweakers on my channel from this very town. And, spoken about those things. Like, I had my phone here that whole time I was talking to that gentleman the other night that was telling me about the cops here, and which ones to stay away from, and which people are dead. I actually have that notebook in this car. I wrote down the names of the officers, and I wrote down the names of, he wrote them down, actually. Like his friend Elizabeth, he was telling me about her. You guys who have heard that recording already, I was asking how to get a hold of her, if there's a way to get a hold of her, and he said, oh, she's dead. I'm like, yeah, that's actually, I don't know why that surprised me at that moment, it shouldn't have, because, I mean, fuck, that's the goddamn experience. And even that officer here talking about the fentanyl, apparently that's what they put in the blues. But see, those guys that are smoking the blue pills in Hood River, that's pressed meth. They're putting it on top of a foilie and burning it like meth, and they're getting high like they're on meth from it. So yeah, it's actually pressed to look like a blue pill. It's literally pressed to look like a store-bought pill. I mean, that's what I noticed as soon as I saw them, is that they're, oh my God, it's bad here, but it's bad everywhere. Like that officer was saying with the fentanyl, when I was telling you about getting them drugs put in my drink up there, I was worried about there being fentanyl in it. And I went up to that sheriff's department deputy there in Hood River with that cup, literally with the cup, and said, "Hey, could you test this for meth?" Or actually, I said I think, because they've told me that they're not allowed in many situations. So I said, so I'm assuming you can't test my cup, something like that. I think I went up to him and asked him if he could test it, and he told me no. But don't quote me on it. The point, though, is that I had approached him, and I'm already afraid of the sheriff's department as well as the police department in Hood River, because cops in rich people town are, well, they work different. They're a lot more crooked, and they're a lot more evil towards the homeless. They're also quite a bit more manipulative usually, so that really sucks. See, that's one of the things about the police in Colorado having their shit together as far as that goes. They've all got the experience to do it, whereas the ones in Chapel, Nebraska, their paper trail is fucking way more massive. And most of the crimes they committed, unlike the cops in Colorado who tried to cease all communications and leave it at that, no matter what, they're just gonna, look the other way and ignore me. The cops in Chapel kept on, after breaking the law the way that they did, same way the cops in Colorado did. Dual County did it habitually. At least 11 different times habitually. Scott DaCosta had to rotate out over 20 deputies, and all of them in between when I first started trying to turn in, who was it, Jordan Anderson, as well as find out the name of the deputy that was there in January of 2017 when I first started this whole process through the sheriff's department of going to the hospital and getting what was supposed to be a caseworker in Tamara, and she did do her job. She's the only one that did. With the exception of she didn't do the mandated reporter thing immediately the way that she should have, and she explained that the reason for that is because I'm autistic. And that we have to, jump through all of the hoops in order to make sure that I'm on disability for autism, and that my disabilities, it is known that they exist. And I also got to talk to some lawyers and ask them what's up, and I did. And I did what it is that they told me to do. I'm supposed to, from that point on, and that was, right at the end of when she was helping. At that point, that's when I started keeping the ledger, and I had that over at Ken and Leah's. That's one of the things that I really needed, but they locked it up behind a wall. or built a wall in front of it. And this is all stupid stuff that sounds crazy, but yeah, it's a small garage, and they wanted to apparently make a little storage area in one part of it, and then the other half of it would be for uh, whatever person that they were renting out the garage to. Because myself and a few people before me, each one of us who stayed in that garage made it a little bit more wind resistant and a little bit more cozy and a little bit more livable. But I had to start over with that again because Ken and Leah they locked it behind, they built a wall and all of my stuff was behind it and they knew it. And I never got to get any of those things back because they built a wall in front of it. Um, the people who've taken advantage of me and all that, I totally get where Tom's coming from with her. He doesn't want to get taken advantage of. And that's where he's at now. Like now he's getting, I don't know if he's getting blackmailed or what, but yeah, he's trying to escape from her and now he's suckered in again. He was hoping she wouldn't see him because he's a really nice guy and he didn't want to get suckered into going through that crap again. Anyway, here's a piece of the glass bottle that was underneath my tire. Like I said, I picked up a piece. We got the video footage of that. When I backed up, you could hear it crunch. Well, obviously, she thinks that's some sort of CIA trick or something. Um, it's just glass. The rubber on my tires would probably just crush it, but that's no guarantee. And you got to see how there was a piece of glass that was even still stuck in it. You got to see how the space in between them shows that, yeah, one of them was behind my rear tire and one of them was behind the front tire. Both of them on the driver's side. I'm not sure if the conversation with Tom about how she might be crazy enough to do that is recorded, but I know that a couple other ones where, partway through the video, she comes up and starts talking. A lot of them where it's just me talking about the situation in the beginning. You end up hearing her by the end of it doing exactly what it is I was saying she was doing, and she's doing it to somebody else. She's coming back to do it to me again. And then, of course, I have Tom saved in my phone as Tom Tillamook, so if anything happens to me and getting a hold of him might be able to get a hold of some information and save some lives. I still would like people to be able to do that. So if anything happens to me, that one right there is his phone number is saved in my phone as Tom Tillamook because he's Tom and I met him in Tillamook. There's a few times where he kind of hinted to me he thought I should be scared because she's nuts because he was scared. And then, the fact that he went and got his stuff and then he was trying to he wanted to hide the fact that he put it right next to my vehicle. He tried to hide it under a blue tarp, but if you look at it from the Fred Meyer side, it's not as well covered, and the briefcase nobody has a briefcase like that except for him. It looks like bronze carbon fiber weave, but it's a hard case and it's polished up pretty nice. So the finish on it is very specific, and it sat right next to her in camp for days before he tried to escape with it. And the first time he tried to escape, he was just looking for a place where he could camp without her, just so he could get away from her. And So he actually left that at the camp the whole time, and she had actually made mention of it more than once. So she was definitely familiar with it. And earlier today, after he had told her not to come over by my car, she came over by my car and started talking to me, and then, of course, walked all the way around my vehicle. And I don't know, there's on the Fred Meyer side, the rear end of my vehicle was pointing towards Fred Meyer. Where he slept was right next to my rear end on my vehicle. And his stuff was all pushed up against my vehicle with the tarp over it. And there was about a foot up, because he did have a bit of stuff. About a foot up the thing, you could see, almost half of that briefcase or suitcase. And so, yeah, she definitely knew that his stuff was next to my vehicle. He wanted to try to avoid complications, and he said he was going to tell her he just found that stuff, his stuff, of course, behind Goodwill. And maybe that would iron things out, and maybe he could try to convince her to get to Portland. He also, and I'm pretty sure this one's actually recorded on here with him, where he assured me that he was going to be trying to get her out of here. I mean, she's driving everybody nuts, including him, and people are coming up to him and telling him how much she's driving them nuts. And then they're also coming up to me and telling me that stuff. I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry. And then we can hear her doing it in the videos too. I can't remember what I was going to make this video for, but oh, yeah, that feels good. I got a rock in the bottom of my foot, and I just got to remove my shoe and get it out of there. I shouldn't have been so lazy about it, especially since it got painful. But it's kind of chilly, and I'm putting on an extra pair of pants. Those officers said that it's kind of a flood area here. I got a bunch of pool noodles. I was talking about the AH-1G Cobra and the things that I was wanting to design to put underneath them. Well, if this is a flood area, there's probably going to be a need to be able to get people out of the floodplain. And depending on how much debris gets caught up in something like that. And there are signs here, just so you know, that say tsunami warning area or tsunami flood area or something like that. And that officer, of course, he put his hand up to show about how high the water gets. It'd be cool if I could, I don't know, take my car and make it so that it can catch the surf when that happens. But yeah, I wouldn't want to trust doing it that way, because the flimsy stuff that I'm using, it would get torn apart if a tree ripped into it. And if there's flooding like that, yeah, there's probably going to be trees in the floodwaters. They said that it starts raining and it doesn't stop. That's part of the year up in Washington State. Now, I was pretty sure that the rainy season here was supposed to start about a month ago. I mean, that's not like full on rainy, but I mean, that's when it usually starts raining. And it's been, here on the coast, it also rains more because of the precipitation in the air, because the ocean is literally right over there. might be able to. They said it's that kind of weather is coming real shortly. If I could make some rescue boats that quick, and there's a need for them. We can hope there's no need for them, but I might be able to make some quickly for just in case. And we don't need an AH-1G Cobra helicopter as a delivery system for such a thing. I mean, like I said, it's designed as a lifeboat, so it's actually something that I intend people to be able to travel in. If I've got a boat that I can stack a bunch of other boats on top of and all of them float, and I can squish them down, well, if somebody needs to get into a boat, they can get into a boat. Also, with the dome top, like I was telling you about, and the way of getting in and out of it that I was telling you about, that's actually something that's real simple to do. And it's also something that can be done by a lot of different methods. And while I'm talking to you, I'm taking off my socks and kind of shaking them out. I don't have enough money to buy enough fresh socks for the month, and also laundry gets expensive. I did go to one laundromat and put enough money in for the machine to go, and it turned on and just soaked all my stuff, but after an hour it hadn't moved. And then all the other ones were in use. I was in a hurry, and life happens. Anyway, the stuff that I have now is for flimsy boat. It's for a suit. It's supposed to look cool. Some of them, it's supposed to be the padding for in it to kind of fill out the body shape that I want. I want the dinosaur to look cool. And also I have another project that's supposed to be a mock-up or prototype for a blow-up boat, and I don't have stuff to actually blow up the boat with, but I go through a lot of garbage bags when I go picking up garbage. Sometimes there's an area that it looks like a good place to sit out of the shade, and there's not any other place to sit out of the shade, and it's at least on what seems to be public land. If it's in an area where I'm not sure if it's public land or a business, I'll go ask the business, hey, is it right if I clean out the garbage back there and possibly sit underneath there because it's shaded, and usually they're all right with it. A lot of times they tell me it's not their property, so they don't give a shit. All the folks at Sinclair that was in Hood River were real nice about that. Now there's a point to this. Fu and, well, matter of fact, all of the people that work there at the Hood River Sinclair that I spoke with, they all know the bullshit. They know the tweakers. They know the drunks. They also know the recycling system and how much it sucks. So what we've been working on here is I don't have much use for most of the cans. That's God's honest truth. I can find uses for them, get it, if need be. I mean, all those cans, if I were to use them in, my little testy boat thing, then I could probably cut them into pretty wide strips and then fold it around itself a few times, or possibly fold it into a circle, or maybe even into a coil for different parts or structural stability. I could probably do a lot of different things with it, but it's metal, and one of the things that I worry about is impact. Anytime that you use metal to structurally stabilize something that's a different material, especially a softer or lighter material, that metal is likely to cut through or break through it. Also, that metal, if it's something like aluminum, it doesn't want to retain its form very well. When you dent it, it doesn't want to retain its memory as well as a lot of other stuff. And it definitely is not all that fun of a material to work with. the good thing is that the deterioration of a soda can in the ocean, it's got to get through the plastic. That's right. Soda cans have plastic lining on the interior, and the paint that's on the exterior helps to prevent oxidation as well. So if you throw one of them in the ocean that's full and unopened, the ring on the cap will deteriorate first, as well as the top and the bottom of the can, and the plastic will likely remain for a while. There's a few cool YouTube videos about that. Now, with the designs that I have, I'd like to be able to make it basically, if you can imagine a shoe. Now take the tongue and make one that goes this way and tucks underneath, or it can go over the top. Now, if this thing is flat, squished flat, you can stack others on top of it. And then, of course, because it's molded and shaped so that it's supposed to be open, it's got a lot of give because it's the #1 recycled plastic. It's the same thing as plastic bottles. Obviously, the shoe isn't, but you get what I'm saying. The shoe is actually primarily a plastic shoe, by the way. Plastic and rubber. Now watch this. Well, I guess it doesn't have as much spring, but it pops back out to some degree to the shape that it was in. If it was a brand new shoe, it'd work better, but I've been wearing these things since I got them in Hood River, and they were used when I got them. I'm actually thankful for that. I got a lot of bottles in the back of the vehicle, so I suppose I could pop it and show it to you. A lot of the concepts that I have, I'd like the world to have them because they're meant to save lives. And a cheap little boat like that, yeah, sure, it's not the best, but it's certainly better than nothing. Also, there's the fact that with the rotomolding system and a lot of other systems, you can actually make it so that it's not going to sink. We have the marine foam, and if you're talking about a boat that's going to be, probably make it easily 16 to 20 feet and have it so that it'll still attach under a AH-1G Cobra with 1 inch of marine foam layer across the entire bottom of it, make it 3.5 feet wide, and you're not going to affect the aerodynamics or the weight and properties of an AH-1G Cobra. That can deliver a whole bunch of lifeboats out there a whole lot faster than any of the rescue helicopters that they currently have. And the rescue helicopters got to fly out there and try to pick up people one at a time, and meanwhile they're stuck in some pretty horrible weather sometimes. If there's something like that that you can drop that's pretty big, or that you can lower to them and you can help them get them into it, kind of the idea that I had behind it is, you guys have seen those pools that kids play in, right? I was a kid once, and I remember that we had a little one over at a friend's house that we were allowed to play in, and we could lean over it from the outside and use our body weight to push the side in. It would pour some of the water out. And, when I was watching the other kids do that, I noticed that as soon as they let it go, it would pop right back out and into shape, which is really cool and good to learn. Now, when you shape the plastic that way, especially #1 plastics, when you push them, they're going to have resistance, just like that. The water pushing from one side and the kid pushing from the other side, and the kid's able to displace that water and make it go over the top a little bit right there because of the way that it just shapes it. But if you really think about that, and the fact that a plastic like #1 recycled plastics, when you try to move them like that and they want to pop back up into place, but you can use your body to push them that way, you can actually grab a hold of the thing, push your hand on top of the front part of it, and just slide your way into it. As soon as you're into it, that thing's going to pop back up into place. And of course, you're still going to have a little bit of an opening so you can breathe. It's not meant to be an entirely enclosed capsule. It's meant to be something that you can get in and out of easily, and it's an emergency thing, you know. It's something that, well, if they had you stuck out there on the ocean for a few months, even in this thing, you know, at least they'd find your corpse mostly intact, because a month is a long time to be stuck out in the sea. And I think in that case, in most life rafts, you would probably end up dead. Even the big bright orange ones that are completely covered and huge. But we're not talking about a situation where all the lifeboats are launched, are we? No, we're certainly not. Or, of course, having enough lifeboats for everybody that's on board. Or, you know, there's any number of scenarios and possibilities. And when I see a lot of military technology that's old and being retired, and I get to see the next generation that's coming up, I'd like to be a part of the generation that comes after that when it comes to helicopters and rotorcraft, because I figured out how to get rid of the engine and the transmission and to basically make it fulfill all the duties required of a rotor as well as an engine in the same piece. I did have some sketches of it. I've got some sketches with the base idea actually on my Facebook, and it's also in a Facebook group called Crash to Treasures and Airplane Enthusiasts. There's a few contributors to it who've passed away, but some of my original designs for those things are still on there. And they're not finely designed and drawn on a CAD machine in a computer. I was trying to learn how to work with Blender so that I could actually do that, though. I didn't have an instructor, so I had to try to learn from YouTube videos, and that's kind of slow because you can't just ask your YouTube video a question and have it tell you. Whereas if there's a human being there and they're going too fast, you know, on YouTube you can pause it, and with a person you can pause it. But if there's something that they do in the YouTube video that you don't understand, or the only one that they have that is for your particular whatever you're trying to learn, and is from somebody who's got a very thick accent, and you can't quite understand their accent, especially since English isn't their first language. And that's not a gripe saying that they're bad people because of it, because they're not. There's a few people that I know who have told me they can't understand a word that comes out of my face. And, you know, they weren't trying to be rude, they just couldn't understand. So it's not like it's a color thing or a geographic thing, but it really is a geographic thing because geographically people speak different languages all over the place. Also, people like to travel, especially people who are rich get to travel, and that's a lot of different nations. I mean, we do get visitors from all sorts of other countries, including former communist bloc nations. There's a lot of Americans who are paranoid and afraid of that. And there's a lot of folks who want to reinforce and bolster our military. Well, I want to bolster the chances of our young men and women coming home. That's the number one thing I want for any and all soldiers. I want them home with their families. If they don't get that, it is a tragedy. And it is very sad. But it's not going to change what I want for those soldiers who are still alive, which is for them to come home. I don't want them to stay over in those places where there's wars being fought over stupid shit. And they realize it's stupid shit, but they still want to fight that war because they want to get some revenge for the friends and buddies that they lost in combat. Lots of people think lots of different ways. When I was trying to design stuff for jets, there isn't a whole lot that I really designed. The stuff that I designed, it's not nothing to do with the weapon system. Well, there's a lot of ideas that I had about weapon systems or things that could be used as weapon systems that I never wrote down on paper and I'm not interested in. The stuff that I wrote down is just my notes on it, on the flow, on how it'll work, on how the Quon Da system works, how the Tesla turbine works, also how the Tesla valve works. And there's two different Tesla valves. One of them's for liquids, one of them's for gaseous. They're both pretty cool. Also how it pertains to the rotor itself. And I've explained this before, but I'll explain it again. If you've got a rotor craft, then the outside edges of that, although the inside of it per rotation may be working pretty slow, the outside edges of it are going very fast, which means if you have a small opening on the very end of it, then it's getting forced air intake and it's going really quick. Now, if you have that forced in through the propeller, or not the propeller, the rotor itself, and you have the rotor quote unquote hollow, which you might believe it'll take some structural stability out, but don't let me hear you, or let's hear me out on this. You make them just a little bit thicker and a little bit longer because you want to force as much air in as possible. And then you use a series of one-way, non-moving Tesla-style valves in there that are actually going to structurally reinforce the entire interior of that rotor. And then in the very center of the rotor, you have the exhaust tube. And that exhaust tube will go right through the center of the area where the forced air on the very end of the rotor is forced into the rotor itself, forced down both sides. And because of the Tesla valve, it won't want to go in reverse. It'll be forced into the center hub of the rotor itself. And, you know, there's a bit more to it than that. But what happens is the stuff that's going around the center shaft is heated up by the exhaust, and because that air is heated up, it's going to be easier to combust, and you're going to get better combustion out of it, and less fuel consumption, which is also important. My battery is down to 15%. I do have my pants on and one of my shoes back and retied, so we're part of the way to where I need to be. There's also an idea that I had that's along a similar line. I saw a Quon Da type of craft that I thought, well, that looks like an alien spaceship. Like he was trying to make an alien flying saucer. But when I was testing my own stuff, I realized that a bell shape is actually a lot easier and a lot better. A more flattened out bell. I also was learning about, all right, so I'm a really big Star Wars nerd, but I also really, even more than Star Wars, I love physics and the way that it works, and it's applied on this planet, including gravity. I know that triangulation is important. I know that if you have something that is 2 foot wide and 2 foot long and 2 foot tall, and you set it on the ground, well, it's pretty stable. Not as stable as a pyramid, though. But there's also the fact that if you lift that just 1 foot up, well, now you've got something that's 2 foot tall. And having thrust vectoring, if you've got thrust that's going down, you have to have it absolutely perfect and the weight absolutely perfect and multiple vectors coming out. And you got to make sure you don't accidentally tilt too far one direction or the other. It's going to flip you over. And a lot of the tests that I did confirmed the same thing. So, I mean, when I went and tested it, I didn't want to just believe what the science book told me. I like to, but not always. Sometimes there's a typo. And also when it comes to applying something like that, you need to dig into the meat of it and actually get some hands-on experience as soon as possible. Any concepts or ideas that you have, you need to get used to the fact that you may not have thought of everything, and testing it out first is a better idea than spending millions, billions, or trillions of dollars trying to build something that there's one little thing that you left out, and you had all of your faith and whatever, but you left that one little thing out, and now you're screwed. Anyway, this is where we come to speeder bikes. If you've got that 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot thing, 1 foot off the ground, and it's being held at all four corners by equal jets pushing straight down, it's going to tilt one direction or the other and fall over. It's not going to work. There's a lot of computer technology you have to put into that. Now then, there's this thing called a gyroscope, and you can have mechanical gyroscope control that does not involve electricity. It's a particular type of pendulum, and it's really cool the way that it works, and you can adjust it so that forward and backward, left and right, that pendulum is going to make sure that you're not going to completely flip over. It's kind of similar to a ballast, like in a boat. Now the other thing is, instead of having four jets at the bottom, you have those jets be a little bit higher up, and you would only actually have to have one large one that's higher up, and also make sure that the four corners of it where it's going to be exhausting that are blowing out at about a 45-degree angle. When you think of a 45-degree angle, that's a lot more tip resistant. And when you've got a mechanical pendulum in it that's going to help to keep you self-righted, you can ride this speeder bike as long as you can get enough thrust to lift you off the ground, which means making a super ultralight airframe. And we have a lot of stuff that is super ultralight. Basically, all you got to make is a lightweight tube that you can sit on and the air can be forced through. And then, of course, at all four corners, you try to crimp it down and make sure that it's forced into very specific areas. And you have a little tiny bit of it where it'll vent just a little bit. That way, as you're moving your body and controlling the thing, you can make sure you don't tip over. And the reason for this is because if you take that exact same square and you lift it up 1 foot off the ground, and its base is going out at a 45-degree angle instead of straight down, then you actually have a 3-foot wide base, a 3-foot by 3-foot base that's pushing off of, that is helping to keep you stabilized and keep you from tilting too far to the left and to the right. So, I mean, there's a lot of physics to it as far as the wind physics and actual terrain physics and ground effects and a lot of stuff like that. That's a lot of stuff that's really cool to learn about. There's also a lot of math involved and a lot of stuff that it might be easy to overlook one little part and get it wrong. Now, there's some people that, like these big important firms, they're going to want to make a really nice, high quality model that looks as exquisite and beautiful and like the real airplane as possible when they show it off. When they make a model to test the concept, they're going to spend a lot of money doing it. And me, I'm grassroots. I might actually use grassroots in the construction of my model if that's what I have available to make rope or string out of. Um, I haven't literally used grassroots for rope or anything of that nature, but you know, if I'm working on a model like the one that I made up in or down in Nebraska that was made out of all those kites, I made it out of a bunch of kites that I got for cheap, and I tested it out until it was something that just a little bit of wind wanted to pick it right up off the ground. And of course, it stayed stable. And by the time I was able to do that, that's what really solidified my belief in the Kwandaa effect, because when I looked at it, it looked very much like a fish, and that's not the Kwandaa effect. Um, the thing is that it looked the way that some of the kites were, it looked like scales, and it looked kind of like a pirate ship whose sails were coming out all over the place to make it look like a fish, like as if a pirate was trying to use sails to scare his opponent and fear his opponent into having a heart attack and jumping overboard or something. Oh yes, we're a giant sea monster. But it was also funny looking because it was a bunch of different kind of kites. They're the plastic ones, like the Wonder Woman ones that I have right now. But some of them were like My Little Pony and Rainbow Bright type of stuff. Some of them had dinosaurs, but they were most of them were the quasi-round ones. And there was just a bunch of them. And I think altogether I had like, I want to say like 8 or 9 kites. And it just, the shape of it very much reminded me of like a koi fish or a goldfish. And I had to use different size and shape of kites for, you know, what would have been the fins and stuff. And when I was doing that, that was also when I was first learning about aerofoils, like really get into the hydrofoil part at that point. And I was also inspired by our pirate ship. And I remember watching as a kid, I want to say it was Prince Valiant, but that might not be it. It's one where there's a prince and he's got a pirate ship and it sails on the air, and he's pursued by some mean pirates that have a much, much bigger ship, and the wind picks up underneath the sails and carries them up a little bit. And it doesn't work anywhere near like they try to show in the cartoons, because that's just a fantasy concept. In real life, it's going to look a bit different. I just didn't expect it to look that much different. But I also looked at the direction that the wind was coming from when it was coming up and picking it up. And I realized what was happening is that it was catching the wind and the kites that were stacked together to try to create lift, and also a little bit of drag specifically where I wanted it so that it could be controlled. The whole idea was that you'd be able to control it by the sails if I was ever able to make a big one. Kind of inspired by steampunk, but it wouldn't have hardly any metal in it because that shit's heavy. Sails are much morely better. With the stuff that I have, it's painter's tarps, 3.5 mil, and I got tape to reinforce it, so if it does get a hole poked in it, it doesn't tear it for a good length of it. Also, the stuff that I'm making out of this, I'm going to make it similar, but not quite the same. I'm just trying to show the concept of how you can make something that opens at a moment's notice. Like it's that quick to open all the way up. But then once it's opened all the way up, it's going to keep itself open. Now with the thing that I'm going to make, I'm going to make it so that it's just plastic. It's not number one plastic. It's just plastic sheeting, so it's really flimsy. I'm gonna make sure that on the boat that I'm wanting to make to show the concept of it, it's gonna be you know, the part of the plastic that is touching the water won't have any holes in it, but the top of the plastic will have gaping holes in it, holes that are like this big in each section that I intend to have so that it can inflate easily. And then the way that it'll actually inflate is by spring power or tension power, basically, because I plan on having a stick along a inside of another stick, and as that one stick or pipe or tube or whatever is pulled, it pulls the control lines and stuff into the hollow tube, and it pulls them all taut. And when it pulls them taut, it'll basically pull the thing open. And when it pulls the thing open, this is one of the things that's cool about animatronics. When it pulls it open, it'll want to pull each of those compartments open. They'll open easily if they can suck air into them. And also, there's the fact that it wouldn't take much modifications beyond that to make sure that, just like with a bicycle pump, if you open it up, it'll suck everything in. But if you shut off one side of the bicycle pump and you do that, and it sucks it full of air, then when you try to push it back down, well, it's full of air. So all you're doing is compressing the air inside of the pump. And if you do that too much, you're going to blow up your pump. And, the valve on it, it's made so that when you push down, the suction forces the valve to open, and it's just a tiny bit of pressure. And then once the thing is all the way down to the bottom, I should probably give a little bit of light here if I'm going to use my hands to try to explain this. It's not working too good, is it? Anyway, you've got a piece that, maybe this work. No, it don't matter. Anyway, as it pulls down and it opens up that little valve, this thing that's in there that creates suction, once it gets down to the bottom, then the valve doesn't have any suction keeping it open, and it closes because the pressure is equal on both sides. When it closes and you pull this valve up, it's prevented from going up any further, so it closes off the hole. And when you pull it up, it pressurizes it. And that's what happens if you clog a bike pump, and if you pressurize it too much, it'll explode. The idea is not to explode. The idea is I've got 25-pound test line. After I've made it and shown that I can pop it open and it'll float, that's a good start. It's made out of the cheapest possible materials and up to and including literal garbage. But it's just to show the concept. Now, I can use that same thing after I've tested it out and shown that it works. That'll be worth putting a little bit more investment in there, which will mean taking some plastic and maybe a few rubber bands in each one of those holes, make it so that it's got a pressure valve like that, so that when I pop it open, it sucks in the air immediately, just like if it was a completely open hole. But then once it's completely done, once it's completely open, that'll close up, and then it's inflated. And, it's not going to be something that's filled with safety foam, because it's not something that I'm intending to be a boat that you're going to live on. It, not even by a long shot. Just be something just to go out and toy around day sailing in. But it would kind of be in the shape of a manta, and you'd be able to lay down on it, and well, in it, actually, because I've lots of different ideas, but they're all similar. And as a result, my first one, I want to make a dinosaur suit for Halloween, and also to try to make money. And I might even, give permission for a museum to have it when I die, if it's cool enough and realistic enough. But it won't be a real dinosaur, and it won't be based on one specific real dinosaur, to be based on a few. It won't be a realistic as if they would have actually been, but it'd be a cool rendition. But also the idea behind that is that it's got to be something that, really just looks like you know, like I'm wearing some clothes that are artificial alligator leather, and I've got a cape that's artificial alligator leather that, you know, has a, well, a really weird look to it. It'd be a very Lord of the Rings Witch King kind of look, but, well, Witch King crossed with crocodile or something. But, you know, the whole idea behind it is to make something really cool, have a lot of fun, test out different concepts that I have, also apply stuff that I've already tried previously, and make sure the stuff that I've tried and applied previously, like the things that I learned about plastic bags and how to get them easily in and out of a garbage can. Um, the whole system of having tubes going into the bags and having them so I can air them up and depressure them. That's, you know, just for testing out at the beginning the basic concepts of some of those portions of it, which will be later on. But the very beginning is just making the bottom and the top around the frame and making the frame first. Because I want the frame to be able to open and close. However, the frame is going to be taped together, and it's going to be taped to the plastic that's the exterior, so it's actually being built in reverse, the way, for example, that the Romans would have built their ships. Today, and through the 1800s also, the way that you were to build a ship, the Viking ships and such as well, you know, they made them so that it was the planks first, and then the ribs that are inside of the boat are built afterwards. And that's the opposite of what we do today. And also the way a lot of ships were built at the turn of the wooden age of sail. They were built frame first, and then the planking was put on the outside of the frame. For this, it would be you're making the quote unquote skin of it, and then you're taping the frame to the skin because it's all basically stuff that's real flexible. And then you've got a few parts that aren't so flexible that'll be your control system. Later on, parts like the open and close flap valve, when you want to close it back up, there would be a 25-pound test line that's attached to each one of them things, so that all you'd have to do is, you know, pull a little piece, just a few inches. It would pull all of the, or you could set it up so it'd do one at a time, if you really wanted to, just in case of wanting to fix it in an emergency. If you're out on the water and you poke a hole, you'll be able to depressurize it just by a pull, just of a couple of inches, and it'll be probably 25-pound test. I think I have one roll of 25-pound, two rolls of 20-pound, and maybe a roll of 50-pound. Two of them were given to me in trade for half a pack of cigarettes, and they were all snipes, so that was pretty cool. They're buried in here somewhere. I got a few though, so I'm going to end this video. Good to be ready. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.